Today we're going to be working on a calculator in Python. This is for complete beginners. It is a crash course. We're going to be making a calculator in Python. This is for complete beginners who know nothing about Python. We will be going over several core concepts as we begin to develop this calculator and make it better. By the end of this tutorial series, you will know how to make good programs that are consistent with object-oriented programming and Python syntax. If you don't know what that means, then this is the perfect tutorial for you. Stick around. We're going to start off learning about variables. Now, what is a variable? A variable is a value stored in the computer that can contain really any kind of data, and it can change, hence the name variable. It's a variable piece of data that you can manipulate, really, or just store. So our first variable we could call my variable, and it's equal to something. We're going to say equal to 1. Now this variable holds a number, or an integer as the computer would call it, and you may remember integers from high school math or whatever you took. But my variable equals 1. My variable can also equal 4, or whatever number you decide to put in. And variables are also not limited to just numbers. Like your home calculator, variables are also able to hold text in single or double quotes. I'll just use double quotes here. Python is very flexible with that, unlike you, who needs to do more stretches in the morning. But variables do their stretches in the morning, and they are flexible. So that is variable. Now, really, the data type that a variable can hold, we've got integers, we've got strings. If you add a decimal, then that becomes a float, or a decimal. It depends on the size of the number, but we'll just call this a float for now. So now that you have a basic knowledge of variables, let's go over the naming convention. So in Python, you usually will separate words with underscores, like my cool variable. Notice I used underscores to separate my cool and variable. We'll leave this string empty, whereas in other languages you'll see my cool variable. This is called camel casing, and it's allowed in Python. Python will really let you name your variable whatever you want, but to keep with Python conventions, use the underscores. So I've deleted all this. The next concept we're going to go into is how to get input from a user, because that is critical to our calculator. So I'm going to call this number 1. You want to be very descriptive with your variables in any coding language, and number 1 tells us exactly what this is going to be. It's going to be the first number that is put into the calculator. So the way to get input is super simple. You say input and enter the prompt. So we're going to tell the user, enter your number here. And what this is going to return is probably not what you expect. And I'll run it real quick just to show you what it does. So you enter a number here, boom, 8, right? This looks like you just stored a number in number 1, and we can print number 1 just to show you that. Once we say 3, it prints 3 underneath it. This looks like it's a number stored as an integer, but it's actually a string. So what we need to do when we're trying to get a numerical input from a user is convert this to an int, like so. So we'll do the same for the second number. Enter your second number here. Boom. So now we have 2 numbers stored in 2 variables, and now we have to find a way to tell the computer to do math with them. So our next concept is going to be operators. So operators are essentially math symbols, right? You're going to remember a lot of these from high school. Some of them are going to be new because computers don't have a division symbol, and you can't use an X for multiplication. So we have a plus symbol for addition, a minus symbol for subtraction, of course. Then multiplication is an asterisk. This is our multiplication symbol. And this is our division symbol, a /. Now there are other special operators like exponent and modulus. Now modulus is a really cool little operator because it divides the numbers and returns the remainder, not the quotient. So yeah, there's a little math involved with making your calculator. Who knew? And what we're going to do is get an input from the user that tells us what to do with the numbers. So we're going to say operation equals input, because we just want a string for this input. We don't want to make it an integer because the user is going to be putting in words. We're going to say add. We're going to say enter, add, subtract, multiply, or divide. I'm going to enclose all of these in single quotes. Now, if you notice, when I do this, it splits the string and gives us an error saying that it wasn't closed, so it doesn't detect this anymore. What we can do to these symbols, this happens because our string is enclosed in single quotes and we're trying to use single quotes in the actual string. The computer is like your grandmother on a cell phone. It cannot tell the difference between these characters. You have to be very specific with it. So here we need to put what's called an escape character. Now, escape characters are special. They're only used in strings. It's really a backslash. This tells the computer, hey, the following character is supposed to be here. Use it as a character, not what it's used for in the code. And I hope that makes sense. But for now, all you need to know is put an escape character before the single quotes if your string is closed in single quotes. Same for double quotes. So we're going to surround these by backslashes and single quotes, which, by the way, the backslashes do not show up in your actual output, which we'll see in a little bit. So now we have enter, add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and we want to add this. I add that for flair, but you could do a colon, whatever suits your needs. And now we're going to be diving into the next topic, conditional if-else statements. So essentially think of a crossroad, right? You have the option to go one path or go the other path, and there's a sign that says Mordor or the Shire, you know? So if your destination is Mordor, then go on the crossroad to Mordor. If your destination is the Shire, go to the Shire. It's as simple as that, and you're about to see how to put it into code. So if operation double equals add. So bear with me here. We are comparing operation to another string. Let me explain real quick. The single equal sign is used to assign values. The double equal sign is used to compare values. So operation is a string that will be equal to one of these or none of these, and we will address each of those outcomes in our if-else statements. So we are comparing the operation to add. If the operation is equal to add, we're going to print number 1 plus number 2. Now, I know it's a lot to take in, but trust me, you're going to be very happy you started this way. So we can say elif, which is telling the computer if the first condition is not met, check this condition. Operation equals subtract. Elif operation subtract, you could probably guess what we're going to do here. Number 1 minus number 2. Elif operation. Actually, before I continue on, just pause the video and see if you can set up the next two elif statements. I hope that went well. If not, that's all right. Just follow along with what I'm about to do. So we have elif operation equals multiply. So we can go print number 1 times number 2. And you may have already done this. Extra brownie points if you did remember that operator for multiplication, and double brownie points if you remembered the operator for division. And now we're going to address the final condition, which is the user did not put in any valid value. Say he put in chicken. Now, chicken is not a valid value, so we have to address that because users are not the best at using programs. So to address this, we type else. Now, what else is is essentially if none of these conditions are met, then do this. Else is the be all end all. If the conditions that we specified are not met, do this. So we're going to print a simple invalid input. So we're going to run this and test it just to see. Enter your number here. I'm going to enter 5. I'm going to enter 6. And then I will say add. And it adds them together 11. Now we can run it again and say 8, 3, subtract. There we go. That's the correct answer. Multiply 2 and 4 for 8. Our final test can be 3, 4, chicken. Invalid input. Perfect. So that works as intended. Now the final thing we're going to do is address this little problem that after you enter your numbers and you say add, but say it's all caps, it says invalid input, even though you said add. Now, what's the problem here? The problem is every time we compare operation to a string, all the strings we're comparing to are lowercase. So if the user puts in anything other than lowercase, then the operation is going to fail and we're going to see invalid input. So the way to address this is really simple. You do dot lower to the string. And what this does is it takes whatever operation is and changes it to lowercase. So we're going to do that on the end of every one of these. And pro tip for you beginner programmers, go ahead and get used to copy pasting because it's going to save you seconds of time, which really add up to years of time when programming. So this looks good. I'm going to make sure that the numbers still work. If I do all caps add, we get 14. So that is all there is to this first tutorial. It's a lot to take in. I highly encourage you to delete all this code, turn off my video, and do it all yourself. Try to remember these concepts. So just practice, practice, practice. That is the best advice I can give you. Practice everything you've learned in this tutorial. You've learned a lot more than if you went to a Hello World tutorial. And in the next video, we're going to be going over allowing more inputs into this calculator, string manipulation, and we will be making it more object oriented. So until next time, hope you get a lot of practice in and stay coding.